Do you know when you just want to live your life in peace without being bothered by anyone? Well, apparently that's impossible when you have a neighbor who wakes up every day determined to turn any banal situation into a police case. It was a quiet afternoon. I'd just come back from mall where I'd bought my Halloween costume. It wasn't just any costume. It was the costume, a hyper-realistic zombie costume with torn clothes, fake bloodstains, and a mask that would make even a Hollywood makeup artist clap. After so long without celebrating properly, I wanted something that would stand out at the weekend party. I, Jackson Rivera, got home, parked, and threw the bags in the trunk. As I was in no hurry, I spent a few minutes on my cell phone laughing at memes and answering messages. Nothing suspicious. Nothing to justify what happened next. But of course, there's always someone with nothing to do and too much time on their hands. That's when I felt a burning look on the side of my face. I looked over, and there she was, my number one snooping neighbor, Gladys Peterson, standing on the sidewalk with that posture of someone who thinks she's the sheriff of the neighborhood. Normally, I'd just ignore her and get on with my day, but there was something about the way she stared at me that made me uncomfortable. She wasn't just looking. She was analyzing as if she were putting together pieces of an imaginary puzzle and coming to a ridiculously absurd conclusion. Just then, my childhood friend and current next-door neighbor, Miguel Diaz, pulled into his driveway. Miguel was a decorated Iraq War veteran who now worked as a trauma counselor at the VA hospital. We'd grown up together before his family moved away when we were teens, and by some cosmic coincidence, he bought the house next to mine 2 years ago. Miguel noticed the tension immediately and walked over, his medical bag slung over his shoulder. "Everything okay here, Jackson?" he asked, his eyes darting between me and Gladys. "Just getting home," I said with a shrug, trying to play it cool. Gladys turned her attention to Miguel. "Dr. Diaz, I'm glad you're here. Don't you think your friend has been acting strange lately? Always coming and going at odd hours, carrying suspicious packages." Miguel's brow furrowed. "Mrs. Peterson, Jackson works freelance. His hours are naturally irregular. So far, so good." I was used to her weirdness. Only this time, she went too far, really far. Out of nowhere, Gladys turned and ran into the house, and I mean really ran, like a horror movie character running from a killer. She disappeared through the door, and for a moment, I thought she had finally given up watching me. Big mistake. 3 minutes later, I'm about to enter the house when I hear sirens, police sirens, several of them. The noise got louder, closer, and before I could understand, 3 cars pull up right in front of me, lights flashing, tires squealing on the asphalt. "What the hell?" Miguel muttered, moving closer to me. Police officers quickly get out, some with their hands in their holsters, others with their guns already pointed at the ground. What about me? All I could think was, what the hell is going on here? The answer came when one of the officers walked towards me with a serious expression as if he were about to solve a heinous crime. "We've received a report of a possible murder," he said bluntly. And that's how my normal day turned into a bizarre episode of CSI. My neighborhood has crazies. If there was one thing I never thought would happen to me, it was standing outside my house, surrounded by police cars ready to throw me to the ground at any moment. But look, another item crossed off my list of absurd things that only happened to me. The policeman in front of me spoke with the firm intonation of someone who had seen it all before, but I doubt he's ever caught a case like this. "We received a report of a possible homicide." He repeated because I still looked like I'd been slapped in the face. "Murder? What do you mean, murder?" I stood there blinking, trying to understand what he was saying. Was he really talking to me? Perhaps I had left my body and become a spectator in a movie about someone else's tragedy. But no, it was me. "Officer, there must be some mistake," Miguel interjected, stepping forward. "I'm Dr. Miguel Diaz. I work at the Veterans Hospital. I've been with Jackson all afternoon." This was a flat-out lie. Miguel had just arrived, but he was trying to defuse the situation with his professional authority. The officer looked skeptical. "Sir, we have a witness who claims otherwise." Then she reappeared, the neighborhood heroine, the world champion of the intrusion Olympics. Gladys came out of her house with a look of triumph, holding her cell phone in her hand as if it were a war trophy. "You did it. I saw the whole thing," she shouted, pointing at me as if I were a psychopath on the loose. "I saw him hiding the body in the trunk." The urge to laugh almost overcame my panic. But the problem was that the police weren't laughing. Me, a murderer? I looked at the main policeman's face, expecting some logical reaction, like a laugh or a "ma'am, please stop this clowning around," but no. The man simply looked at me seriously and did what any policeman would do in such a situation. Sir, raise your hands and step away from the vehicle. Holy shit. The will to argue died right then and there, because the way things were going, any wrong word could earn me an unpleasant encounter with the asphalt. So I obeyed. I raised my hands, took 2 steps to the side, and all I could think was, damn, I'm going to be arrested for a crime that never happened. That's what you get for living near a crazy person. As I stood there with my hands up, another surprising figure emerged from across the street. Principal Eleanor Wright from the local elementary school, where I occasionally volunteered teaching art classes. She was in her 60s, universally respected in the community, and happened to be Gladys's younger sister. What in heaven's name is going on here? She demanded, her authoritative principal's voice cutting through the chaos. Ma'am, please stay back, one of the officers instructed. We're investigating a reported homicide. Principal Wright's eyes widened. A homicide? In this neighborhood? She looked from the officers to me to Gladys, and a look of realization crossed her face. Oh, for goodness sake, Gladys. What have you done now? The police moved forward in formation as if they were about to discover the hideout of the city's biggest serial killer. One of them opened the trunk at once, ready for the most shocking crime scene of the century. And that's when the silence came, that strange pause, those 3 seconds of pure collective vacuum. The policeman tilted his head. His partner moved closer to get a better look. Another rubbed his face as if reviewing the decisions that had led him to that moment in his life. Because inside the trunk, instead of a corpse, what they found was a Halloween costume, a hyper-realistic zombie, a costume made of dirty torn fabric with fake blood dripping through the cloths. The detailed mask rested next to it, looking at them with that macabre countenance, and I swear I almost saw one of the policemen suppress a laugh. Miguel peered over their shoulders and let out a low whistle. That's some professional-grade stuff, Jackson. For the hospital fundraiser, right? I nodded, grateful for his quick thinking. The annual Halloween fundraiser at the VA hospital was well known in the community, giving me an even more legitimate reason for having the costume. Gladys, on the other hand, didn't quite accept reality. Is that it? Is that what was in the trunk? She shouted, as if she was seeing a mistake in the movie script she'd written in her head. Ma'am, began the policeman, taking a deep breath, trying to keep his patience. That's a Halloween costume. Principal Wright interjected sharply, her patience clearly at an end. Gladys, this is beyond embarrassing. This is harassment. But it looked real. Gladys insisted. This isn't just a costume. It's clearly designed to look like a body. It's suspicious. Aren't you going to do anything? I couldn't stand it. After all this, I finally spoke up. Look, if I'm a murderer, I'm terrible at it, right? Because hiding a body and then standing in the car, fiddling with your cell phone in front of everyone doesn't seem very smart. The policeman let out a long sigh in the way that only those who deal with absurdities on a daily basis can do. He turned to the woman and said, Ma'am, calling the police on a false report is a crime. And that's when Gladys's face of victory disappeared. You don't understand, she insisted, her voice taking on a slight tremor. There have been break-ins in the neighborhood. 3 houses on Maple Street were burglarized last month. I'm just trying to keep everyone safe. This was new information to me, and I could see some of the officers exchanging glances. Was there a grain of truth to her paranoia? Miguel stepped forward again. Officer, I can confirm there have been some break-ins. But they were across town, not in this neighborhood. Mrs. Peterson tends to exaggerate threats. But that wasn't the end of the story. I wanted to say that after the trunk scene, the police left. My neighbor apologized, and my life went back to normal, but of course it didn't because these people don't know how to lose. The policeman closed the trunk with a tired sigh and looked at Gladys with the expression of someone who doesn't earn enough to deal with this kind of idiocy. Madam, your complaint was completely unfounded. She, on the other hand, didn't want to accept it. No. I saw him hiding something. That blood there, it can't just be paint. If you've ever seen someone sink into a hole and keep digging, you know exactly what was going on there. She could simply admit her mistake, but she preferred to double her bet. We can test this right now, if you like, said the policeman, taking out one of those kits that detect real blood. And then Gladys realized that she had gotten herself into trouble. She hesitated for a second, looked away, bit her lip as if she was weighing up her options. The right option, to stay put. The option she chose, making everything even worse. It doesn't matter. She shouted, crossing her arms. Even if it's fake, he could still be hiding something. Search his house. That's it. Principal Wright stepped between Gladys and the officers. My sister has been under tremendous stress since her husband passed away last year. she explained in a lowered voice. She's been seeing threats everywhere. I've been trying to get her to talk to someone. This revelation cast Gladys in a slightly different light. Some of the neighbors who had gathered looked at her with a mix of irritation and pity. Now she wanted them to break into my house. The policeman rolled his eyes in a way that practically screamed, "My God, why didn't I choose another job? Mom, we don't have any evidence of a crime here." But Gladys couldn't accept that because in her mind, if she was wrong, it meant that she wasn't the neighborhood hero and that, my friends, was unacceptable. But he always acts suspiciously, always arriving late, walking strangely. He must be hiding something. I'm sure of it. Miguel's face darkened at this. Mrs. Peterson. Jackson works late because he's a graphic designer with clients in different time zones. And he walks strangely, as you put it, because he donated a kidney to his sister last year and still experiences occasional discomfort. A collective gasp went through the small crowd that had gathered. This was true. I donated a kidney to my sister, Sarah, 18 months ago after a sudden kidney failure. My occasional grimace when walking up steps or after sitting too long was a small price to pay for saving her life, but I'd never expected it to be used as evidence of suspicious behavior. This information visibly shocked some of the onlookers, and the mood toward Gladys grew even colder. Dramatic pause. The policeman looked at me as if to ask, has this woman always been like this? Or is it just today? And that's when I had an epiphany. I wasn't her first victim. I remembered when the old neighbors moved out of the blue. How they told me that someone was always calling the police for anything stupid. But now, for the first time, she had crossed the line, and the policeman knew it too. Mom, if you keep insisting on this, you're going to be the one in trouble. It was the first time all day that she had been quiet, but not for long. I'm just trying to protect the neighborhood. She tried to justify herself. Protecting the neighborhood from a Halloween costume? I snapped because I'm not made of iron. The policeman gave me a, please don't make it difficult look. But it was too late. Gladys glared at me. If looks could kill, I'd have been carried off in a real body bag. But before she could shout anything else, a second policeman who was checking her records on the system approached the chief and whispered something in his ear. The chief arched his eyebrows. He slowly turned to Gladys. Mom, he began with a calm that gave me goosebumps. How many reports have you made in the last 6 months? And it was at that moment that I knew her house of cards had fallen down. If there's one thing everyone learns early in life, it's that if you cause too much trouble, one day people's patience runs out, and at that moment, right in front of my house, the police's patience had run out with the most insufferable woman in the neighborhood. The policeman who was checking her records finished whispering something to his boss, and I saw a discreet gotcha smile appear on his face. He crossed his arms and looked right into Gladys's eyes. Ma'am, you've made 13 reports to 911 in the last 6 months. I had to stop myself from dropping my jaw. 13? She called the police 13 times? I looked around and noticed that some of the neighbors had started coming out of their houses, curious about what was going on. Little by little, the audience for the big show was growing, and Gladys, well, she didn't like it at all. I was just being a concerned citizen, she said, her voice getting louder. Principal Wright closed her eyes in what appeared to be deep embarrassment. Gladys, please stop talking. Eleanor, you don't understand. This neighborhood has changed. It's not safe anymore. Gladys insisted, a hint of desperation creeping into her voice. The policeman shook his head. Let's see, took out a notebook and started listing. In February, the lady called to say that an Amazon delivery man looked suspicious because he was carrying a large box. In March, she called because she thought a neighbor was dealing drugs, but he was only unloading bags of garden soil. In April, she said that there was an unknown car prowling the street, which was her neighbor's own newly purchased car. I was already dying inside, holding back my laughter. It was just embarrassment after embarrassment. Gladys, on the other hand, was turning red, very red. These are legitimate concerns. The policeman ignored her and continued. May, the lady called to say that there was a strange man in black clothes lurking around houses. It was a substitute letter carrier. Juno. That's a good one. The lady said that a wild animal was wandering around the neighborhood. It was a golden retriever. I swear I almost fell over laughing. The other neighbors started whispering among themselves, and I realized that the tide was turning. People had finally had enough of her. Miguel stepped forward. Officer, as a mental health professional, I'd like to suggest that Mrs. Peterson might benefit from some support services. What she's experiencing sounds like heightened anxiety and possibly paranoia, following a traumatic loss. This compassionate intervention created a visible divide among the gathered neighbors. Some nodded in agreement, while others shook their heads, clearly not buying the grief excuse for Gladys's behavior. She called the cops on my 16-year-old son for loitering when he was waiting for his ride to basketball practice. One woman called out angrily. She reported my husband for suspicious digging when he was planting our vegetable garden, another added. But an elderly man spoke up in Gladys's defense. Since Harold passed, she's been alone in that big house. Fear does things to people, especially at our age. The icing on the cake came when the policeman turned to his colleague and said, "Well, I think we have enough elements to constitute misuse of the emergency service and disturbance of public order." That was the first time I saw Gladys turn pale. "What? My dear, if you call the police for any nonsense, one day the police will call you." The policeman put his notebook away and sighed. "Mom, you need to understand that calling the police for no real reason has consequences. Our time and resources are for real situations, not to solve your paranoia. I just wanted to help." She still tried to insist, then help by stopping calling us. The neighborhood, now gathered on the sidewalk, erupted in whispers and disapproving looks. Some people clearly knew these stories. Others were hearing them for the first time and seemed shocked. And it was at that moment that someone said what many were thinking. I knew she was crazy, but not that crazy. I didn't see exactly who said it, but I saw that Gladys heard very well. She looked around and realized that this time no one was on her side. And just like a house of cards, her facade crumbled. For years, she had done whatever she wanted, given hell to whomever she wanted, and gotten away with it. But now she was completely alone. To everyone's surprise, Principal Wright stepped forward and put an arm around her sister's shoulders. "I think that's enough," she said firmly. "My sister needs help, not public humiliation. Yes, she was wrong to call the police today and on those other occasions. But turning this into a public spectacle isn't helping anyone." This unexpected defense created an awkward silence. Some neighbors looked ashamed of their excitement at Gladys's downfall, while others still seemed eager for justice. Miguel nodded in agreement with Principal Wright. The best outcome here would be for Mrs. Peterson to get the support she needs, and for the rest of us to return to our lives. The police officer considered this, then nodded. "The police have given their final verdict. We're going to record this formally and forward a report to the neighborhood administration. Depending on their decision, you could be fined or even asked to attend a community standards meeting. In the meantime, I strongly suggest you speak with someone about these issues." He handed Gladys a card. "This is the number for our community liaison officer who works with senior citizens on neighborhood safety concerns. Call her instead of 911 next time you're worried." I wish I could have filmed her face at that moment, because there in that instant, Gladys finally understood. She had planted chaos. Now, she was going to reap the consequences. She tried to protest, but no one else gave a damn. Not the police, not most of the neighbors, not me. The circus was closed, and the main performer had no audience. After a few more minutes of pointless arguing, the policemen decided they had wasted enough time and left. I stood there watching the neighbors disperse, some exchanging complicit glances with me, others just shaking their heads in disgust at Gladys. Principal Wright and Miguel helped Gladys back to her house, the former whispering something that looked like a scolding mixed with concern. Miguel returned a few minutes later. "Man, that was intense," he said, shaking his head. "But you should know that Gladys isn't just a busybody. Since her husband died, she's been terrified of being alone. He was the police chief here for 30 years, and she somehow thinks it's her job to continue his work." I hadn't known this detail, and it added a layer of complexity to the situation. "Still doesn't justify calling the cops on a Halloween costume," I pointed out. "No, it doesn't," Miguel agreed. "But grief makes people do strange things. Eleanor's been trying to get her into therapy for months. When I was finally alone, I looked at my car, at the trunk, at the zombie costume still there. Harmless, but responsible for everything. And I thought, well, at least that was the best purchase I've ever made." 3 days later, I was getting ready for the VA hospital Halloween fundraiser when the doorbell rang. I opened it to find Principal Wright and Gladys standing on my porch. Gladys was holding a store-bought pie and looking like she'd rather be anywhere else. "Jackson," Principal Wright began, "my sister has something she'd like to say to you." Gladys stared at the ground for a long moment before mumbling, "I'm sorry, I thought you were a murderer." It wasn't the most graceful apology I'd ever received, but considering it was from a woman who'd called the police on a golden retriever, It was practically a sonnet. I've been seeing things that aren't there since Harold died, she continued, her voice steadier now. Eleanor and Dr. Diaz have convinced me to talk to someone about it and to stop calling 911. I accepted the pie and the apology, figuring everyone deserves a second chance. Or in Gladys's case, a 14th. As it turned out, my hyper-realistic zombie costume won first place at the fundraiser. I dedicated the win to Gladys. After all, it had certainly proven its realism. If you like this true story, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel.